People come to the Fort Worth Stockyards for the noise, the photo, the moment. But the real story is quieter. It lives in the details you walk past and the building that once held the weight of an entire industry. This is the Livestock Exchange Building, and for a long time, it was the place where deals were made that decided what happened next, not just for Fort Worth, but for ranchers across the West. Today, there's a museum inside it, and it's not here to sell you a version of history. It's here to keep it from disappearing. The Livestock Exchange Building was built to be functional, but it still carries presence. A mission revival landmark built to house offices, commission companies, and the machinery of communication that kept this place moving. Banks, rail offices, a post office, a telegraph office. So much money passed through these rooms that it earned a nickname that still sounds unreal, the Wall Street of the West. And you can feel that old energy if you stand still long enough, not in the noise, in the echo. Inside this building is the Stockyards Museum, operated by the North Fort Worth Historical Society. It's a non-profit, and it runs on something you can't mass produce: people who care. I met Teresa, the museum director, and she carries the Stockyards the way some people carry family history.
I'm Teresa Burleson. I'm director of the Stockyards Museum that's operated by the North Fort Worth Historical Society. I want to introduce you to some of the history of the legendary Fort Worth Stockyards. This picture right here puts things in perspective. This picture was taken in 1949, and it shows that, well, it doesn't even show all of the stockyards.
That's what the museum does. It changes your sense of scale. It takes something you thought you knew and pulls the camera back until you realize you've only been seeing the surface. The stockyards were not just a place where cattle were. They were a system, a pipeline, a proving ground for a growing country. Teresa laid it out in a way that hits hard when you realize how much of it is gone now.
The Fort Worth Union Stockyards were incorporated in 1887, and in 1893 they sold, and the new owners dropped the word Union, and the Fort Worth Stockyards were incorporated in 1893. It remained an active stockyards until 1986. It was our nation's third largest stockyard. Chicago was the largest. Omaha, Nebraska was second, and we were third. But we were the largest in the southern and western states of America.
And then there are the pieces most people never learn. The kind of details that turn people calling it an old building into them realizing world history touched this place.
Now, what a lot of people don't know is that during the World War I, there were more horses and mules sold from the Fort Worth Stockyards than anywhere else in the world. Our allies, France and Great Britain, came here to buy horses and mules for the war effort. Even though they had motor vehicles then in 1917, they were not reliable because they were so new, and they still relied on real horsepower for the war.
That is what you're walking through when you come down here, not a set, not a theme, a place that carried real weight. But here's the thing, history doesn't preserve itself. Buildings do not save their own stories, people do. And Teresa said something that stuck with me because it explains exactly why this museum feels different.
Well, I've been here 15 years, and I love my job. And since it's a nonprofit, as you can imagine, there's not a lot of benefits, there's not a lot of pay, but you come to a point in your life where you realize that it's not always about the money. And I love coming to work every day and stepping into this building and listening to the wood floors echo and the bricks on the street, and I have longhorns right outside my office. To me, it's just heaven.
That right there is the heartbeat of a nonprofit. It's not a job you do for status. It's a job you do because you believe a place like this deserves witnesses. If you've ever wondered why some buildings survive and others get erased, this is part of the answer. Someone cared long enough to keep showing up. The museum is operated by the North Fort Worth Historical Society, and their mission is simple and heavy: preserve, protect, and perpetuate the history of the Stockyards and North Fort Worth.
The North Fort Worth Historical Society celebrates its 50th year this year. We're having a anniversary party on June 11th this year at River Ranch, just right over here on 23rd Street, and we're very excited about that. It has been the Historical Society's goal to preserve, protect, and perpetuate the history of the Stockyards and North Fort Worth.
That mission is the reason you can still walk into a space like this and see photographs, artifacts, and stories that would otherwise end up scattered, forgotten, or tossed. And the museum doesn't exist in isolation. It's surrounded by history you can still touch, even next door.
The Coliseum was built in 1907, late 1907. It was finished in 88 working days, and it was completed on February 7th, 1908. It was home to the world's first indoor rodeo, the first time rodeo was ever broadcast over the radio, the first time rodeo was ever broadcast over the television. It was the first time they had bull riding as a competitive sport. There were so many things that the Coliseum did that changed the way rodeos were produced. It's more than just a building. It's history for our Western culture.
That's the kind of thing you don't get from a quick scroll. You get it when someone takes the time to collect the facts, keep the receipts, and tell the story right. So, if you've ever come to the Stockyards and felt like you were only seeing the outside layer, this is your sign to step inside. Teresa put it better than I ever could.
If you like history and you want to know about the history of the Stockyards and North Fort Worth, this museum is where you're going to get it. It talks about early Fort Worth, from the time it became a fort, all the way up to the days when this was an active stockyards. There are historical markers on the street that our historical society had placed there, but inside this museum is where you're going to get the history and the photographs of the people that made the history.
The Livestock Exchange Building once held the pressure of high-stakes business. Now it holds something just as important: memory. And the Stockyards Museum is proof that history isn't just a thing we inherit, it's a thing we choose to keep. So next time you're down here, do not just take the picture and leave. Walk into the museum, stand in front of those old photographs, read the names, and let Fort Worth feel real again. If you like these kinds of films, feel free to follow my page.